Yo, what's up, Exiles? Welcome back for another build guide video. My name is Shifty, and I'm back today to bring to you the Arc Bloodmage build guide wrap-up. It being a wrap-up means that the build is finished. It is polished. It also implies that this is the last build guide in a series. It is. Don't worry, I would also call this a comprehensive guide, so you don't have to watch the other videos in the series. I'm going to cover everything, okay? I'm gonna do things a little bit differently in this video. I'm gonna play some footage of the video in action first. First, I'm gonna do that, and while the footage is going of the build in action, I'm gonna talk about the build. I'm gonna talk about its pros and cons. I'm gonna talk about the defensive layers, etc. And then after that, I will dig into like the passive tree, the gear, how to gear up, crafting, the skills, your gem links, all that, and I'll go into POB and all that afterwards. But first, let's see how the build looks, shall we? Build overview. This is primarily an Arc Infusion build, but we also use Ball Lightning to help us with single target. We use Orb of Storms religiously to generate our lightning infusions, and then we have a cast on crit setup for generating fire infusions. We use a Black Flame Covenant from Nothing Jewel to give us Secrets of the Orb, which gives us +1 to Orb of Storms limit. This is actually a ginormous quality of life upgrade. This allows us to generate 3 infusions at once instead of 2. This doesn't sound like much, but it aligns nicely with the cap of 3 infusions. We use Orb of Storms for utility purposes as well, so it applies exposure and blind, which buffs our other skills. So having +1 to Orb of Storms also adds to its coverage. This from Nothing Jewel is very cheap. I got mine for like 3x at the start of the league, and it's only gone down in price since then. If you are solo self-found, or for some reason you can't acquire one in the future, then I recommend you anoint Secrets of the Orb instead of anointing Fast Metabolism until you can get a from Nothing. But I still recommend getting a from Nothing because it's just very efficient. It helps with a lot of things. So we figured out how all the lightning infusion systems work. So lightning infusions literally triple the damage of an arc, as in like literally 200% more damage when it's infused. This literally leads us to situations where anytime it's infused, it'll just one-shot any rare in the area. So it'll like chain 12 times, and even if at the very end of its chain there's a rare at the end, it'll still one-shot them. Like, it doesn't lose damage with chains, you know. And then Ball Lightning is very misunderstood. People think that it's weak. I don't think so. I think it's in a good place for what it's meant to do. Okay, so everyone thought that the infusion was for the explosion. Everyone thought that the explosion was going to be, you know, the crowning achievement of Ball Lightning's infusion, but it wasn't. The explosion is very small and it doesn't do that much damage. But truly, the actual buff that Ball Lightning gets from fire infusions is that the fire infusion slows down the projectile. Slowing down the projectile is strong for the same reason that the projectile deceleration gem is strong on Ball Lightning. That's because Ball Lightning, as it moves through a target or over a target's head, it pulses every 0.2 seconds, and that's fixed. You can't speed that up. So every 0.2 seconds, it pulses and it hits the target. And if you slow down the projectile, it'll stay in the area of the target you're trying to hit for longer as it passes by him, as it'll go slower. So it effectively increases the duration for which a burst of Ball Lightnings is going to hit the target. So yeah, I would say that's the very strong part of the infusion, is that it slows down the projectile further. You'll see in the clips that if you just watch it when it's infused, like watch how far it travels. Against a boss, every single tick of the Ball Lightning hits the boss, just about. So it's like super efficient to use it this way. Pros and cons. It shouldn't come as a surprise that clear speed is the biggest pro for Arc. Ever since it was introduced in POE1, Arc has been renowned for having some of the best clear speed of any spell. You right click a pack, everything in it dies. Nice and simple. The biggest downside for Arc has always been its single target, but now, with the addition of infusions, this downside gets mostly alleviated. The top end damage of Arc when it's infused is actually nutty. Upon inspecting the tooltip, you'll see that when you get a lightning infusion, your Arc literally triples in damage. And how this build works is you build up your infusions and then you spend them. You deal a massive amount of damage in a small window. Then you have none for some time. This is why I felt that it was very important to have a second skill to help with single target. Ball Lightning acts as a nice secondary button to press when you run out of infusions when dealing with single target. As such, I would describe this build as having very burst-like damage. The biggest con of the build throughout its entire lifespan is mana problems. Although towards the very end of the build, it does get quite a bit better. But that is to say, this build does involve pressing a mana flask. After you get Tecrod, you are able to life tap almost everything. This solves mana issues, but some issues do still persist when bossing. For mapping though, we do have Mana Remnants, which solves just about all issues, especially late game. And you may think that it'll be a burden to go out of your way to grab these remnants, but let me just say that you're already grabbing lightning, fire, and life infusions off the ground already, okay? And they do tend to clump together, okay? So you're not going out of your way to grab another remnant. You're going to the same spot and you're just picking it up more for no extra time spent. Half the time when mapping quickly, you may find yourself on 0 infusions, and this is fine. Without an infusion, Arc still clears everything in its path with ease. The key difference that you'll find is that infusion makes it so that when clearing, you have the potential to one-shot rares. You'll naturally generate more infusions when you need them the most, though. And what I mean by that is anytime you stop to cast a bunch, like when you're dealing with hard content, like Abyss or Ritual or Expedition, you'll be getting way more infusions back in these scenarios. And you'll be generating more infusions as well. But for bossing, it makes a world of difference. You always have infusions up while bossing. I found that one Arc, when lightning infused, does about the same damage as one unleashed Ball Lightning. So they're about 1-to-1 in terms of damage, roughly. And that's to say that the damage is substantial. Damage is not a problem, I would say. The other biggest pro of the build is it's super tanky late game, so tanky, and we're about to go into that next, but it has like 6 defensive layers and they all feel good. The build is life based, so it's a life based build, but once you get all those defensive layers up and they start working together, you get so tanky. And so another big pro for the build is that you can start with very low investment. And that I would pair with a con that at the very top end of the build you can spend a lot. So it can be very expensive to min-max, but at the beginning it's cheap. Okay, so it's cheap to get into, expensive to min-max. Some might regard that as a pro. I regard that as a pro. It's more gear progression. You have more stuff that you can progress through the game with. You have more pieces of gear that you can upgrade, and it feels like meaningful progression. And I regard that as a pro, but some people would say, it being expensive is definitely a downside. And I'll give you that, okay? But with infusions, I would say that the single target feels pretty effortless in almost all scenarios, and the clear speed feels amazing in all scenarios. There is quite a lot of crafting involved. I would consider that a pro. And then the unique jewel from nothing, which I mentioned earlier, is somewhat required. You can always path over there for 6 points instead, or anoint it. But I would say the jewel is pretty much required. It gives you so much quality of life grabbing that. So, defensive layers. Overflow. Overflow is enabled by your ascendancy. By default, it makes it so max life can exceed its normal maximum value by up to 1.5x. So if you had 4,000 life, your new maximum life can become up to 6,000 situationally. Your next defensive layer is Leech. You get Spell Leech from your Ascendancy, and we leech life after dealing any spell damage, up to 25% of max HP per second. So if you have 4,000 HP, you can leech up to 1,000 life per second. We take Overleech as well. You could consider this another defensive layer, which makes it so that your leech doesn't stop when you reach full life. This makes it so that your leech is always going, assuming that you've attacked recently. And this is from the fast metabolism anoint that we go for. Or when I say anoint, I mean instilling them using liquid emotion. Your next defensive layer is Recoup. So Recoup is when you regain a percentage of damage received over 6 seconds. It's 8 by default, but from the tree we bring it down to 6. My build is currently at 80% Recoup, so 80% of the damage taken, I gain that back as life over 6 seconds. This is initially... So Recoup by itself is pretty meh, but when you combine it with your Ascendancy, called Grasping Wounds, it's pretty strong. Your Grasping Wounds says you take 25% less damage, and then that damage is then taken over a period of 4 seconds. But yeah, when you combine them, it's very strong, because it's negating the downside of Grasping Wounds. Recoup is. So Grasping Wounds is your next defensive layer. As I just discussed, it makes you take 25% less damage effectively when you have Recoup coupled with it. Okay. Alright, so your last defensive layer is Tecrod, which you get from the unique jewel Undying Hate. Okay, so it's going to sound confusing at first, but just try to hang in there. It's actually quite simple. So the description says that you get 1 life regen back per 8 life spent over the last 8 seconds. I'm going to bring up a graph that I made in Paint here, just to try to help elaborate. So effectively what happens is Tecrod keeps track of how much life you have spent in the last 8 seconds, roughly, and it keeps a life total. Just imagine you have a pool of how much you've spent recently. It will always give you back exactly that amount that you've spent over 8 seconds though, so you have to wait 8 seconds to get it back. However, if you gain that life back from other means, that's to say if you have another defensive layer, which we do, let's just say Leech or Recoup, where you gain the life back from some other means, then what happens is that Leech doesn't go, or that regen doesn't go away when you reach full life from Tecrod. And if you're just spamming life cost skills like Orb of Storms and Ball Lightning all the time, this pool of life cost goes up. It can just keep going up to very high numbers, to the point where you're getting 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 life regen per second just from Tecrod. And once you get to that high level of regen, you just can't die, essentially. You just have so much regen. As long as you keep casting, that life pool total will stay high, and you'll continuously keep getting back 2,000 or 3,000 regen back per second. That's on top of your leech per second that you're getting, and on top of your recoup, and on top of your overflow. And it just all really starts to stack up nicely. That being said, Tecrod is a very important part of your progression. It's pretty expensive, but it is mandatory. Or rather, it's mandatory eventually. So you want to get this eventually. This is like one of the last things you get. One last point I want to make on the topic of defensive layers. So defensive layers, I would like to describe like metaphorically as a countermeasure. So like a recoup as a defensive layer is your countermeasure to Grasping Wounds life loss. Where Tecrod acts as a countermeasure to life costs. They're like counterbalances. They balance each other out, okay? And because of this, because they're in the background, they're being used as countermeasures to make the build function, and also because of how harmoniously they work together, I would strongly caution you against dropping any of these defensive layers. That is to say, you should keep all of them. Don't compromise and drop one of them thinking, it'll be okay. The overleech will take care of everything. Okay. And then one last warning, and this one's just like general advice. At the very beginning of a map, none of your defensive layers are up. Okay, so at the very beginning of the map, you're very vulnerable. Just be careful when you run into your first pack, because you have no recoup going, you have no Tecrod going, you have no leech going or overleech, and you have none of it. You have none of it. You have no overflow going, none of it. Okay, so just be careful until you start leeching off your first mob. Okay, that's all I'll say. It is easy to like use the life costs and then you're like down to 1 HP and you have no way to recover it immediately. So at the very beginning of the map, you're vulnerable. Be careful at the beginning of a map or at the beginning of a boss fight. All right, here we are. Here's the full POB. This is the final tree that you've all been waiting for. Including the Undying Hate Jewel, Run Nothing, everything's all included, all end game stuff, and Heart of the Well, of course. Heart of the Well, the only mod, the mod that you care about the most is lightning damage, chance to be lucky. That can get as high as 25%, but this is the one I have. I got max res on it and crit, and I just had to have it, and recoup. Yeah. But I'm going to start from the top, or start from the bottom rather, and I'm going to go through the leveling of the build. So at level 17, you should expect to be here. You should go straight for all this damage as soon as you can. At level 35, you're going to grab your first Ascendancy, roughly, and you're going to get base crit for your first Ascendancy. Okay. And then this is like the last point you're grabbing. This is right as you're getting into Act 3. You want to be grabbing Spiral. It'll give you Chaos Res to help you get through Utsal and other Chaos Res or Chaos Damage zones. Okay. On your second trial, you're going to be around level 49. This is what your tree will look like. You will be grabbing Spell Leech for your second trial. For your third trial, you'll be getting recoup stuff. So as I discussed earlier in the defensive layer section, Grasping Wounds works very well with recoup. So for your third Ascendancy, as you're grabbing Grasping Wounds, you're going to go and grab this stuff. These recoup wheels here, and here. Very important that you grab this once you ascend. You don't have to grab it before you ascend, but once you're ascending, once you click Grasping Wounds, you want to make sure that all these nodes here are clicked, all these recoup nodes, okay? Later on, we'll get a little bit more recoup down here as well, as a side note, okay? Okay, so that is your third trial, is Grasping Wounds, and your fourth trial is just straight up Crimson Power. If for some reason you don't have an ES chest and you just want to be hyper efficient and you don't want to use these nodes here yet, you could like just do Whispers of Flesh or something, because you are using a Blasphemy Curse for damage, and this is just like consistent damage, or you could do Gore Spike, either one. But what I did is I just went straight for Crimson Power. I was like level 90 something by the time I got my fourth trial, and by then I had already gotten enough currency to craft an ES chest, so I just spec'd right into this, and it does give you like over 1,000 life by doing this, so it's very worth grabbing. Okay, this, once you grab Crimson Power, you no longer die. If you are a hardcore player wondering how to get through hardcore, get to Crimson Power fast and get a good ES chest, and just keep putting on a new ES chest, as it just puts you that much higher on the life pool end of things sooner. Okay, but once you get this, you do start getting close to like Immortal. If you play carefully, you could definitely go deathless through hardcore, grabbing Crimson Power with the leech and whatnot. Okay, but yeah, this is your tree. And around also, when you're coming up here, you're going to grab Chaos Res. These are temporary wheels, this one and this one. we're going to end up grabbing, so the next tree says level 9x. That means level 90 something. This means whenever you're getting over your chaos res cap, you're going to start dropping these nodes here, like these, for instance. Okay. Is these give you 21% chaos res, this gives you 11%, you know, so you will end up dropping these like that. So once you get to level 90 something and you get your chaos res sorted such that you're almost capped without those wheels, so if you can drop this one and still be like either capped or close to capped or whatever, then yeah, this is your next tree that you're going to be going for. You are going to be expanding down this way, grabbing this percent life and recoup, more crit, and we get Archon. One change from the previous video, we were assuming that Archon was going to have better uptime, but like it has like a built-in 20-second like refractory period, one might say, a period in between in which you cannot do anything. Okay, so that we do not grab these anymore. Where was it? The effect of Archon, here it is, and the movement speed from Archon. We don't grab these anymore. It's just not worth it because it's just doesn't, it's like 1/3 of the time it has an uptime, but we do still keep Archon because it is a 25% more damage multiplier. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, and that's your 90 something, and then your final tree. You don't have to wait until your final tree to equip a From Nothing. I actually recommend you get this early. What From Nothing does is it allows you to equip or allocate passives around a keystone that is not connected to your tree. So all these nodes here, Empowering Infusions, Secrets of the Orb, are allocated right now. Stormbreaker is allocated right now, but we're not connected to it. We didn't have to path over there. So that's what this does. That's what From Nothing does. And we want specifically the Black Flame Covenant ones. We can grab this stuff around it. Okay, but most importantly is Secrets of the Orb. We really want this. If you didn't catch it at the beginning sections when I was talking about the build overview. Okay, and then you also will. This is very important for all blood mages, is getting an Undying Hate with the Tecrod in tribute to Tecrod. The rest does not matter. It doesn't matter how many souls or whatever. We're not grabbing anything inside this radius. In fact, make sure that, notice that over here, we're on this side. As soon as you pick up Tecrod, you want to make sure you go left side. Okay. But you can put on Tecrod early as well, but you do want it late. You do end up needing it late. So when you end up getting all the plus levels to spells, like when you get +3 on your amulet and you have +4 or 5 on your wand, plus you have socketed +2 in your wand as well that you can get from runes, and then you can get +3 from your focus, and these, like, the cost of everything starts going up a lot when you do that. So that's when you really start needing Tecrod, because then it's just like you need it to even like sustain your life when your gem levels start getting up there. So you'll start feeling it when you need to buy Tecrod. You don't have to buy one of these immediately. This is one of the last things I bought. But once I had upgraded to a focus, you just can't wait any longer. You're like, you just start doing so much damage to yourself and you're not recovering any of it. So you really need this defensive layer to really effectively be a blood mage. Okay, very important. And then as I had discussed, the Heart of the Well gives you chance for lightning damage to be lucky. And if you don't know what lucky is, so like lightning damage has like a really wide roll range. So it can, like, for my arc, I think it's like anywhere between like 50 damage and 50,000. And what that means is the game, every time you cast arc, it randomly rolls something in between this range. So somewhere in between 50 and 50,000. So it can roll 30 or 60, 65, 100. It can roll like really small damage numbers. And when that happens, you're going to do like nothing. Okay. That's just what lightning damage does. It just, sometimes you get nothing, but also sometimes you're on the other end of the spectrum. Okay. And it only and you hit that 15,000 damage roll, and you just chunk the boss, right? That's what lightning damage does. What Lucky does is, instead of rolling just once in between this range, it just randomly rolls for something in between it. It'll roll twice. It'll do 2 rolls, and it'll take the better of the 2. So say it randomly rolled a 30,000 and it randomly rolled a 52, it'll take the 30,000. Okay, so it gives you better odds of not hitting a low roll. Okay, and it gives you better odds of hitting a high roll. So that's what Lucky does, and it's very OP, very strong that we can get this so easily just through a jewel. And I found mine pretty cheap. I don't know if you'll find yours for cheap. If you're solo self-found, it may be hard to unveil one of these. They are somewhat uncommon. I've unveiled one so far, and I see a ton of them on the market. So there's that. We did drop a bit of penetration on the tree from the previous build. That is because you cannot penetrate a monster's resistance below 0. Okay, and the order of operations is you pen second. You don't penetrate first and then LE weakness second. So what happens is even if you LE weakness, so let's say you have a 75% resistance mob, and you hit them with LE weakness, it goes down to 30 something percent or something, right? And then you have 30 something percent of penetration, it takes them down to 0. Penetration can't go negative, so any penetration value above 40 or 50 is just kind of useless most of the time. Is against a unique mob, you're going to be casting LE weakness on them. Against a magic mob, they're not going to have as high of resistance, and a rare mob, same thing. You're just going to penetrate right through. They're not going to have that much resistance. You just penetrate straight through. And if they have really high lightning resistance, then you cast LE weakness and you penetrate straight through. So you're never getting into negative resistance values really using penetration, and certainly not in conjunction with LE weakness either, or exposure. They just help you get to that point of 0, and that's what you care about. Okay. This node's very important. Maximum lightning damage just brings that top end further. It just brings that scale out further. Okay, so this is our full tree. We grab a lot of crit. This is highly optimized. If you're wondering if there's something on the tree that you want to grab, so personally the last 4 points that I added were these 4. So I had a hard decision to make, what do I spend these last 4 points on? I chose this right here, and going for one more jewel socket. Okay, is you can get a lot of good stuff from jewel sockets, not just this jewel that I have here, but there's loads of good rare ones and unique ones that you could use. So that is noteworthy. That's why I went for the last jewel socket for your level 100. Okay, for your level 97 to 100. But if you wanted to spend those 4 points somewhere else, I highly encourage it. If you're hey, I want some mana regen, I was highly considering taking 2 points here and then 2 points here or something. Okay, because this reduced effect of shock is nice as well. Okay, and it's just, these are very efficient points, but instead I chose the jewel, as I think it's just better all around, and it's a balanced option, And on that note, let's move on into the skills. So there's 3 different sections to the skills. In the leveling phase, you're going to use Spark. I'm not really going to go into this too heavily. It's very self-explanatory. Spark, you fire through the flame wall. The flame wall buffs the spark. You get lightning infusions from Orb of Storms, which buffs the flame wall. Okay, you get cold infusions from Frostbomb, which buffs the spark, which you don't get a lot. You don't get a lot of cold infusions, but you get them sometimes. Okay, and then use mana remnants, just like in the late game version of the build, to fix your mana. Before you run Tecrod, the massive difference here between before Tecrod and after Tecrod is that beforehand you don't run life tap on anything, and afterwards you run life tap on everything. And on Ball Lightning you run Atalui's. This is your lineage support in the late game. This is to help your single target. What Atalui's Bloodletting does is it gives you 2% extra damage per 10 life cost. Let me just tell you my life cost right now in the end game, and I'm not even at level 21 gem or anything. I'm at level 19 gems right now, so I'm not all the way there yet. My life cost of Ball Lightning is 2,300. Let's just do some quick math here. That's 230 times 2%. That's 460%. Sorry, I misspoke. 460% of damage is extra physical. Okay, I mean, many will argue that physical isn't as synergistic with your build because it can't shock, but that is quite okay. That much flat physical damage is more than welcome. It like doubles our damage. Okay, it does some crazy stuff. Wait here, where is it? Yeah, it like doubles our damage. Once you get some really high life costs, it's like some really crazy scaling, and it's very synergistic with the rest of the build, specifically the Tecrod stuff, and Blood Mage and whatnot. It's all very synergistic. So yeah, after you get Tecrod, you are going to be running Ataluis. You're going to run life tap on everything except for Arc. Okay, Arc, I'm recommending you run Zenith 2. One might argue that you could run Zenith 2 on Ball Lightning as well. I chose not to for one reason and one reason alone. That is because you're casting Ball Lightning right after you get done casting Arc and your mana's low. So in like a real game scenario, you're in a real situation. One might. That'd be a better way to describe it. Yeah. In a real situation, you're going to be, never mind. You're going to be better off that way. You know, I kind of lost my train of thought, to be honest, but I think I got my point across. So here is your gem links for Ball Lightning. Okay. So, the point I was trying to make is that having, it on Ball Lightning would be non-synergistic because you're using Ball Lightning usually because you're out of mana or you're out of lightning infusions. Usually both. Usually you run out of mana and lightning infusions around the same time. Then you switch to Ball Lightning and Orb of Storms. Orb of Storms is also on life tap and efficiency as it costs a lot. But also very important to note that Orb of Storms has some very important like util gems to go here, like these are in order of importance. Okay, so Overabundance gives you one more Orb of Storms. Blind makes it so you can use Blindside, this gem here, which is very, very strong on all your gems. And then lastly, Lightning Exposure, which makes it so you lower everyone's resistance by like 20%, I believe, by default on normal monsters, and then it like goes down depending on how strong the monster is. But even against like a unique monster, you're going to be lowering their resistance by 10%. So it's not nothing. It's definitely useful to have here. And then of course life tapping it. So between Orb of Storms and Ball Lightning, you'll be getting your Tecrod life costs up. I come from the future. No, not really. But actually, after I finished recording the video, I realized I didn't touch on Arc. I forgot to explain all the gem links for Arc, so here we are. Okay, so Arc. I decided Wild Shards was the best route to go to get extra projectiles. You get extra projectiles without losing any damage. Okay, very freaking nice in my opinion. Okay, some would argue that not all 8 projectiles are going to hit an enemy, and you're totally right. But even if 2 extra projectiles hit an enemy, the 2 that are going diagonal in front of you, if those 2 hit an enemy, that's still better than Scattershot, is that gives you 2 projectiles, but it gives you 25% less damage and like 20% less cast speed. Okay, so it's already better than Scattershot in that right. Same with Fork. You know, his you lose damage on there too, but on Wild Shards you do not lose damage. Okay, granted, there's only a 25% chance to fire it, but hear me out here. Before you go Tecrod, I recommend Sion's Temper. I mean, not Tecrod, sorry. Before you go Ataluis, Ataluis on your Ball Lightning, because you can only have 1 lineage support, okay? Before you go Ataluis, I recommend Sion's Temper. Okay, Sion's Temper. This is like Wild Shards on crack, okay? It's just like constantly you're just firing 8 at a time, just over and over, just 8 projectiles. It's really fun to use for something like Breach. You He's like, you open the breach and you start casting, and you know, arc is going in every single direction, and every single arc is hitting an enemy, and then every single enemy that's hit is then being chained to 12 other enemies, and it's just like crazy looking. It's crazy. Okay, so I highly recommend this for like the budget version before you get to Atalui's Bloodletting. Okay, so this is the lineage gem you'll use until then on Arc instead of wild shards. It's literally just the same as wild shards, but instead of just having a base 25%, it starts at 20 and it goes up by 20 every time you cast and don't hit. So every time you cast and it doesn't hit, you go, so the first cast is always 20, and if it doesn't shoot 8 on the very first one, then the next one is 40% chance to shoot 8. And if that one doesn't shoot 8 projectiles, the very next one's 60%. You get the point. Eventually you get to 100% after 4 or after 5, whichever it is. And then you're guaranteed. So it's like a deterministic wild shards that scales in your favor. So it's very nice to use, very fun to use. But yeah, going back to talking about the arc links. So we're using wild shards. It's the most important link, I would argue, one of them. The very next link is Blindside, followed by Deliberation. Then Lightning Mastery and Zenith 2. Zenith 2 is actually probably one of the best ones. It would definitely be a little bit higher up, but I just put it last. I only put Zenith last because you're only going to be using this after you go Tecrod, right? So here you're going to be using Efficiency or something like that before you go Tecrod. You might, what I did here, just to share what I did, instead of Efficiency, this was harder to sustain, but instead of Efficiency, you can also use Rapid Casting. And it works very well with Sion's Temper because the more times you cast, the more likely you are to fire more projectiles. So the ergo, you fire or if you increase your cast speed, you're also increasing the rate at which you're rolling that dice to hit the 8. So that's why this is what I tried and I liked it. It feels so good having like buttery smooth. If you question why I use Deliberation, I ask myself that question every day. No, not really. I don't actually ask myself that question every day. I can give you an answer to that. I can tell you why I included it and why we don't use considered casting. Well, the biggest reason why we don't use considered casting is it goes against wild shards. It goes against wild shards or Sion's Temper, either one, because it reduces your cast speed. So you're casting less often, which means that 8 projectile thing is going off less often, right? So that's why we don't use considered casting, even though it is used on ball lightning and it's a big damage multiplier. Okay, and then make sure you don't use Zenith until after you have Tecrod, and make sure you're life tapping everything else before you start using Zenith. Okay, then Lightning Mastery, I think I would actually swap these 2 places, and I probably will do that before I publish the video. Lightning Mastery goes before Deliberation. There's always a chance that you could replace Deliberation with something else. But I felt that reducing your movement speed while you're just holding down right click didn't feel bad at all. With Arc, because when you're holding down right click, you're already in the middle like of a dense pack, and that's when you're trying to get it to go off. That's when you want it the most, right? Is when you're in the middle of a dense pack, because that way all 8 projectiles will hit something, right? Or all 9 rather. So yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to cover Arc as I didn't cover it in the previous segment, so I had to go back and redo it and include Arc. So here we go. There's Arc for you. You also are running Spellslinger. This is something that's new. The Spellslinger comes from your wand base, from the base type of your wand. See how in the implicit it says grant skill level 16 Spellslinger. Okay, that's where it comes from. You want to try to get a wand base that is a Spellslinger before you start crafting on it. And we'll talk about that soon, but I do have a few crafting guides out there, and I will reference them towards the end of the video. Okay, so Spellslinger is a skill which will cast all the skills that are linked to it, essentially with like a mana cost multiplier, and but what's important is with one press of a button, you can cast 2 skills instead of 1. So once you get Spellslinger, you're going to start running Elemental Weakness as a second curse. So this, actually, I need to probably write this in the notes, as I don't think I've mentioned it yet explicitly, but you don't start running Whispers of Doom until you get Spellslinger in your dual curse. Once you start running Spellslinger, you have 2 curses. Okay. That's when you go Whispers of Doom. That is the notable that will enable you to go dual curse. Make sure that when you go grab LE weakness to go dual curse, make sure you're clicking this as well, so it enables both curses to work on the enemy at once. Otherwise, by default, a monster can only have 1 curse on it at a time. Okay, this is very important. I'm just going to write this in the notes very quickly, and I'll probably just edit this out or something, or maybe not edit it out. Important. Don't make sure to get Whispers of Doom as soon as you start Spellslinger plus Elemental Weakness. All right, continuing. Okay. Just want to make sure I mentioned that we have that. So anyway, Spellslinger, you press 1 button and it casts both skills for you. Flame Wall will increase the damage of Ball Lightning by a lot. That's because the base damage of Ball Lightning is very little, and you're getting like 300 or 400% damage extra. So if you get to make the base damage go up, and then like it just multiplies like by a lot, since it's the first step. Anyways, it will multiply your damage by a lot by using that with Ball Lightning, because its base lightning damage is so low. You get the base damage just a little bit higher from Flame Wall. Also, Flame Wall, by the way, does benefit from Lightning Infusion. So try to make sure you've saved 1 Lightning Infusion before you cast Spellslinger, okay? Is it will consume it, and it'll make it so the Flame Wall does double the damage, or you get double the benefit from it for your skills that pass through it, which is very good for Ball Lightning. Okay? I honestly find myself not casting Spellslinger barely ever, as we don't need the extra damage, but it is there if you need it. Also, there's Sigil of Power, which if you put a staff in your second hand, with Sigil of Power on the implicit, you can cast this. This will give you like 60% more damage. Okay, crazy. I should cast this more often, really. I really should. I don't cast this enough. It's just crazy more multiplier. Especially for bossing when you're going to be standing still. Okay, and then we have Mana Remnants is our aura here. We have Blasphemy Temp Chains. We run this on all versions of the build. We have Cast on Crit Living Bomb with Overabundance, Boundless Energy Retention, and then you'll notice that I have Lightning Warp here unclicked. So this is an optional 6th link switch in. So you can opt to cast on crit a second thing, being Lightning Warp. What Lightning Warp does is it will it's kind of like Flicker-Strike. If you ever seen Flicker-Strike build, you just randomly start teleporting around the arena, and like it leads to faster clear speed, but I'm not a huge fan of it personally, because it's kind of disorienting, but it is kind of fun. I recommend you try it. So once you get a 6th link for cast on crit, you could try this like this. Instead of Harmonic Remnants, you run Lightning Warp, and what Lightning Warp will do, it'll just randomly execute enemies and grant you an extra Lightning Infusion, which you like, because you like Lightning Infusions, because they're good for Arc. Yeah, okay. So I recommend trying this. This is recommended in both versions. You could do that instead on both of them. And I feel like a lot of users will enjoy this, I think, for sure. Like, there's a lot of Flicker-Strike enjoyers out there, and I think, yeah, it's just a similar playstyle. It's just the spell casting version of that. I encourage you to try it. Don't drop Living Bomb for it. You're going to cast 2 spells inside of Cast on Crit, okay? But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, whether you like this Lightning Warp, Cast on Crit Lightning Warp or not, once you try it. it's not meant to be there for damage, really. I mean, it does give a little bit of damage, but what it's really there for is to give you more lightning infusions and to like execute enemies for you, so you can like cull them at 10% life. So it's kind of nice as well. So that's effectively like your 10% of the life bar. You don't have to, you can just ignore, so that's something to keep in mind or something to think about. But yeah, before Tecrod, just make sure you're using efficiency on things when you start struggling on mana and life cost. Because if I haven't really mentioned this, but I imagine you already know that because of this first node here, Sanguimancy, all your skills get a base life cost equal to your mana cost, so it's inescapable. No matter what you do, like any mana cost that you gain is also going to be added to your base life cost. So like if anything, your life cost will be higher than your mana cost once you get Tecrod. But yeah, that's where that comes from, and that's why we're having to work around that. Okay, so that's the skills. That is the skill tree. I'd also like to talk briefly about charms and unique items. Okay, so charms, you definitely want to have a stun charm and a freeze charm. I recommend having those so you don't ever have to worry about getting stunned or frozen, assuming these are off cooldown. And then I'm personally using Sanguis Heroum, a staunching charm. It is it drops consecrated ground when you get bleeding, and it also removes bleeding. So I like the consecrated ground. It's 5% regen, pretty freaking good. On your ultimate life flask, you just want to try to get some percent of it as instant. You can also get the full thing as instant, but it's less recovery overall. And then your mana flask, you just want increased amount recovered. You don't want recovery rate, because it's going to feel like shit, because it's not going to be enough recovered for you. Just make sure you go increased amount recovered for your mana flask, and you get the charges recovered per second. Okay, moving on to unique items. Okay, so there's only 3 unique items I would recommend, and I recommend you only use one. So you only pick one. If you're gonna pick a unique item, you only use one. That's because it's very hard to get res capped when you're using a lot of unique items. Okay, and you lose a lot of life as well doing so. So I'm just saying be cautious, okay? But I don't recommend these for no reason. So I recommend these are in order of what I'd recommend them, but they're all very good, okay? So Soul Tether. What Soul Tether does is your excess life recovery from Leech is applied to Energy Shield, but as a downside, you lose ES per second. Okay, so what this effectively does is you make use of your ES pool. It doesn't look like much right now. You only have 900, but if and only if you grab Soul Tether, you're going to go on this right side instead, and suddenly, look at that, you have a 1500 ES pool, and that's literally just 1500 extra life pool. It just makes you tankier, super tanky. And if you're doing this, you can definitely look into getting some ES on gear, and also, you don't need to go for any armor bases. You just go for all ES bases, and any amount of ES you can get on gear is just a W on top of the normal amount of life. So for gearing, we're also going to go over gear as well. That's going to be next. Oh, let me just quickly silence this alarm. Wipe to stop, please. Thank you. Okay. So Soul Tether. I would recommend this one the most. This is the unique item that has the most potential. It's just going to make you super duper tanky. Okay. Choir of the Storm. You'll notice that at the top it says grants a skill level 20 lightning bolt. That can vary between like level 16 and level 20. You want as close to level 20 as you can get. I recommend only running this over a rare amulet, only if it's level 20. And then you'll support the lightning bolt skill with a bunch of supports, and it's going to help you with your single target. It's going to help you with your clear, and it's just going to be fun overall. Choir of the Storm is just a fun, unique to use. However, you lose a lot of stats by losing your amulet your amulet. Like a lot. Yeah, like +3 to skills, and spirit lost alone is very hard to compensate for. And I'm going to talk about how we have 2 separate gear sets here, and I'm going to go into those next. The last item is, of course, Headhunter. Headhunter is good on every build. Okay, similar to how Mage Blood is good on every build in POE1, Headhunter is good on every build in POE2. It's a fun multiplier. It's a player power multiplier. Everything just gets better when you have a Headhunter. If you can afford it, fucking get one. I mean, you can fit it in the build, is what I'm saying. But just make sure you're only going with one unique item. Don't go with Headhunter plus Choir of the Storm plus some unique ring, because you're gonna miss out on a lot of survivability, a lot of damage, and whatnot. This all works together very efficiently. Okay, so without further ado, I'm gonna start talking about the gearing of the skills. Your gear. You're gearing. There's gonna be two separate gear sets. Okay. Focus and Scepter. Scepter's very cheap. You're going to do Scepter first. Everyone is going to go through this gear set right here, roughly. We're going to talk about it, but you're going to start off with a Scepter, and the very last thing you ever upgrade is your Focus, and it's very hard and expensive to do so. I finally managed to do so right before making this video. But effectively, what you have to make sure you do first is craft all these gear pieces in order. If you're confused about what to get, in the notes section, I did make like a gear progression section here in the notes. What? Oh my god, stop fucking. So you can do these things roughly in this order that I listed them, and you'll be fine. So I recommend you upgrade your wand and your amulet first to get more damage first. You get more movement speed as soon as possible. You get your From Nothing Jewel, and then Atalui. So this is all like damage and like quality of life, like really important stuff, you know. And then after that, you try to get the high ES body armor, etc, etc, etc. Like you could follow this in order, and then at the very end, after you get everything upgraded, like once you're getting close to perfect gear, then you can recraft your chest and your amulet, and you get spirit on it, which is very hard to do. It's a big leap going from the amulet that I use, or that I recommend in the first version, to the one in the second version. Trying to get spirit on it as well as life, as well as +3 to all lightning gems. It just becomes a lot. And same with the chest. Trying to get double T1 with spirit on it is not easy. Okay, so both of these crafts are expensive, and crafting the Focus is not hard. Actually, it's not very hard at all. I have like a small guide of how to craft it right here. So if you are wondering how to craft that, that's how you do that. But I very highly recommend you wait until the very last step to upgrade the Focus. So make sure you do all this before that. You get Tecrod first. It's very important that you get Tecrod first, because you will like literally start killing yourself with your life costs if you don't have Tecrod before you get another +3 to skills from the Focus. Okay, that's something to keep in mind. That you get the Tecrod, and I also recommend you get your runes for your boots and whatnot, and the runes for your wand before you upgrade to the Focus. Okay, I will go over the runes last. I believe I'll do that in game, but I'll do that last assuming I don't forget. There's also 3 crafting videos on how to make this gear. 3 of the hardest things to make are some of the most important things that you need to craft yourself, because they'll be very expensive if you try to buy them off the market. Okay, the boot craft. There's a increased socket effect boots that I use. These are like one of the last things you make, but nonetheless, the amulet craft is very important, and the wand craft is very important. Okay, because trying to buy these on the market will be very, very expensive. Okay, so be sure to check out these links. This is literally me explaining how to craft these things in real time as I craft them, and this is literally the items you're going to be looking for, examples of them, and how to craft them step by step from scratch. Okay, make sure you check those out. Okay, I talk about skill rotation here. I talk about the defensive layers. Don't pay no mind to all that. Okay, as I've already talked about all that for you. But that's for progression. We can go through items very quickly. On the Scepter, you're really just looking for strength and as much spirit as you can get, hybrid and a flat roll of spirit included. This is just my wand. Any other 2 prefixes could be good. Like if you had spell damage and lightning, or spell damage or lightning damage or anything like that on the prefix instead. Damage is extra fire, damage is extra whatever. All those prefixes are great. I talk about things to look for on the wand in the video. Okay, the Scepter I talked about. The Great Helm, really you just want the crit chance on the suffix, the cold and chaos, or like anything and chaos, and then you want like a tier 1 life. Okay. The chest piece is like very lenient. You can either get like life on there as your 3rd prefix, or you can get hybrid ES would be good, or like anything. There's a lot of good prefixes that you can hit after you get T1 ES. For the gloves, it's very important that you get Arcane Surge on the gloves on critical hit. It makes life so much easier for you. It gives you mana regen. It gives you cast speed. Okay, but other than that, the only thing else that matters in the gloves is the life roll. Okay. On your boots, at this stage of the progression, I just recommend crafting some budget boots. Just start with a base that has 35% movement speed. Use the essence of life on it to force life onto it, and you're done, really. And then you just try to get resistances on the suffixes by desecrating or whatever. Okay, but just try to get some boots with like high life, movement speed, and as much resistance as you can get. The amulet, you want to get percent life on this version of it as an earlier version of the amulet, or you can skip to the late game version of the amulet, which is more expensive to craft. Both of them are an option, which we're about to talk about in the next segment, which will be the focus segment. We're not going to linger as much on those. Some of this is all the same. And then rings, I recommend trying to get cast speed on them with life and resistances. Your belt, just life and resistances. Chaos res, of course, is good on everything. Okay, and then once you equip your focus, you're going to be swapping a couple things out. And the first thing is going to be your body armor, your boots, your amulet, and your focus itself. Your body armor needs to have spirit on it. Very specifically, very, very important here, you need to get 90 spirit between your chest and your amulet. So when you recraft, you need to make sure that between the two, you have 90 extra spirit to make everything work together nicely. That gets you both cast on crit, blasphemy, with mana remnants. Okay, very important there. Very important. If you by chance are struggling on spirit when you're trying to swap to the focus, this is very short term while you're trying to fix your gear, but you can get a little bit of extra spirit from right here, this thing. Okay, I'm not recommending this to anybody, but if you're struggling on spirit, that's how you get it. Okay. Okay, so this is all your stuff here. No other really gear changed. I mean, I did include the unique jewels in this version of the build, but not in this version. Or actually, no, wait, yes, I did. But nonetheless, the big thing that changed is your spirit, your focus, from your scepter to a focus, your body armor and your amulet changing, as well as I recommend upgrading to these socket effect boots. Mine are 50% movement speed, but you can get them even higher than this. You can get like 65% at the very top end. Again, there's a video in the notes on my YouTube. They're all YouTube shorts. They're very short videos on how to craft those, especially the boots. Very expensive craft, but to do it deterministically, I'll show you how to do that if you go click that link. Okay, and I think at this point in the video, I will make the links pop up now, like one after another or something. They've probably been popping up for a second. Okay, but that is like all your gear here. Okay. There is very clear like before and after here, before the scepter, before the focus and after. That's the big thing. And then for your skills, there's a very clear before and after getting Tecrod. Okay, so just be wary to swap over to this stuff once you get Tecrod, running only Zenith on this one, then life tap on everything else, and a 2 Ataluis on this. Okay. So very important stuff, but that covers pretty close to everything. On the gear, you can see the runes. So you have your budget rune right here. You have your budget lightning damage rune, and you have your +1 to all spells. That's your expensive one, but it's your better one. So you ideally want to get +1 to all spell skills on both rune slots. Okay, assuming you have a 2 rune slot wand. For your helmet, you can get 5% increased damage taken for enemies that you curse. You curse all enemies, very good. For your body armor, you just want % increased armor evasion ES. For your gloves, you want % increased cast speed. For your boots, oh wait, this is for the budget boots. For the boots, you want the Ferric runes of the chase. They're very expensive, but this is your late game boots that you can seek to get more movement speed. In Path of Exile, movement speed is king. So if you can get more movement speed, I always recommend you should. This is how you do so. In the late game, it costs a lot, but that is how you would do so. Okay. And that's all that changes here. Okay. With the runes, I believe. Yeah. Okay, I'm hoping I was able to help you guys. I'm hoping that this build finds you guys, and that I guess I'm doing the outro right now. You know, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. There may be more that I add after this, in which case I'll cut this part and I'll do another outro. But thank you guys for watching, and you know, I'll catch you on the next one. You know, let me know if the build helps you, if you like the build, down below.